I'm sure that you've all heard the phrase, you reap what you sow. Well, I didn't really grasp what that meant until it happened to me. I'm Samuel, by the way, but you can call me Sam. I'm 21 and currently a college student. A few months ago, I did something awful to my girlfriend, and I'm still paying the price. If only I could go back in time. It all started back in high school. Stella and I grew up together in a small town just outside of Nashville, and we were totally in love. When it came time to go to college, we both chose to study in Nashville, but at different colleges. Stella was the sweetest girl I'd ever known, and our big plan was to get married after college and start a family. She chose to study education so she could become a teacher. Her studies were so full on, she was busy all the time, whereas I'd chosen business school, and even though it was busy, I wasn't as crazy as studying education. I actually had quite a lot of spare time, so I ended up joining an entrepreneur club. Seeing as I wanted to start my own business one day, Stella totally encouraged me, and even though it meant we didn't see each other much, things were still okay between us. But pretty soon, things started to change. The more new people I met, the more I realized I was growing apart from Stella, and that, in actual fact, she kind of bored me. All she talked about were her classes, and even though she still loved me so much, she was the same old girl for years. Things just felt dull between us. So when a new girl called Jenny joined the entrepreneur club, I couldn't help but notice her. She was 3 years younger than me and so gorgeous. She liked wearing tight clothes, which could show all her body's curves. All the guys couldn't take her eyes off her, me included. One time, seeing Jenny stand in the corner of our club room scrolling her phone, I decided to approach her and see if she was as sweet as her look. I walked up to her and said, "Hey, are you a camera?" She looked confused and said, "Huh?" So I said, "Because when I look at you, I can't help but smile." She didn't even laugh. She just flipped her hair and walked off saying, "Nice try, but no thanks." Even though she hadn't been impressed by my attempt at a pickup line, I couldn't give up. If there was one thing in life I loved, it was a challenge. So from that moment on, I challenged myself to win her over. I know this was wrong because I had Stella, but guys, I was bored. However, a couple days later, there was a rumor going around that Jenny and our club's president Max were dating. Well, turns out this was indeed true, and to say I was disappointed would be an understatement. But I already had a girlfriend, so I tried to shake it off. A few weeks later, I was walking on the street when I heard an argument. I realized it was Max and Jenny, and I couldn't help but eavesdrop. The last thing I heard Jenny say before she stormed off was, "Just wait and see." Then suddenly, she bumped into me and fell onto the ground. I quickly helped her up and apologized, but Jenny said, "Sorry, Sam, I'm so upset." I felt so bad for her, so I offered to take her home and make sure she was okay. I called us a cab and we climbed in. Little did I know Max was watching us from across the street. In the cab, we were silent. Then eventually I plucked up the courage to ask, "So, you and Max, what happened?" And Jenny said that they'd broken up because he didn't like her wearing tight clothing. She said she could wear whatever she wanted and asked if I agreed. So I said, "Yeah, of course. It's your body. If I were Max, I'd be so proud to have such a beautiful girlfriend." After I said that, Jenny leaned her head on my shoulder. I couldn't believe it. Soon, she'd be all mine. But hang on, what about Stella? I decided to not say anything to her at that moment because she was busy with exams. As soon as I got Jenny, I'd break up with Stella. After that, Jenny started opening up to me more. We often text until after midnight. And in the club, she started to bring me snacks and even stayed behind to help me clean up after. She was even flirting with me, and everyone in the club had noticed, including Max. He didn't approach me about it, but I often caught him staring at me in a nasty way. As for Stella, she still called me often, but I was kind of quiet. She came to my place one day and insisted on making me dinner. She said it'd been a while since our last time together. So I reluctantly spent time with her, but to be honest, I didn't care. During the meal, I just fastened my eyes on the phone to text Jenny. I knew that Stella noticed a change in me as I looked up. I caught her sadly suspicious gaze. I was kind of nervous. Was she going to question me? What should I say? At that moment, I couldn't find any excuse for my inattention. But I wasn't ready to tell her the truth yet. My relationship with Jenny wasn't official, so I didn't want to break up with Stella. But still, she didn't say anything, so I also kept quiet. Phew! One weekend, I went to a board game cafe with the club members. Jenny also came, and when it was time to head home, she asked if I could drop her home. Obviously, I agreed, and Jenny gave me a big hug. When I looked to the left, I saw Max watching us. But neither me nor Jenny cared one bit. "Move over, Max. Jenny's mine now," I thought to myself. In the car on the way home, we chatted a lot, and she said she'd heard I already had a girlfriend. I found myself opening up about Stella, and even told Jenny how boring she was. Jenny didn't say much, but when we got to her house, she asked if I wanted to come in for a bit and have a beer. I mean, I didn't have to think twice about my answer, and I don't think I need to spell out to you about what happened next. Well, after that night, Jenny still came to the club and we continued on as friends, acting as if nothing had happened between us. But a month later, she suddenly texted me, and my life flipped upside down. "Sam, I'm pregnant," she said. And she'd even send me a photo of the positive pregnancy test. I was so shocked. How could this have happened? I immediately went over to her place and even bought another pregnancy test for her, just to make sure. Well, there was no doubt it was positive. So I told her I'd stand by her and share the responsibility. After that, I decided to break up with Stella. I talked to her on the phone and said we were too different. She was such an introvert while I was an active and open person. Of course, it broke her heart. She tried to hold me, but I was going to become a father, and Jenny needed me. Plus, I wasn't interested in Stella anymore. Over the next little while, I spent a lot of time with Jenny, and we officially started dating. I went into full-on protective mode. I picked her up every time we went out, like going to school, to our club. In public, I always took care of her, from the smallest things, such as getting her food and water, opening the car door, and so on. And of course, Jenny was very happy. Every time I did a thing for her, she always showed people how sweet and caring I was. Hearing that, the happier I was, and the more I cared for her. When there were only two of us, I brought her food and pregnancy pills to make sure she was okay. I started reading books about raising a kid. She liked to take pictures of all that stuff and post it online. Maybe she was really proud of a boyfriend like me. Eventually, I started to realize that this kid deserves a perfect family, so I decided to propose to Jenny. Sure, we might not get married for a while, but an engagement would at least make things more real. I bought the ring and arranged everything. I chose her favorite restaurant, and just before dessert, I got down on one knee and said, "I know we're moving fast, and you might not be ready, but I love you, and I want our baby to have the best life. I'll always take care of you both, and can't wait to spend my life with you. Will you marry me?" I waited, and Jenny looked shocked. Then suddenly she asked me to stand up and looked so embarrassed. Then she said, well, this is awkward. I couldn't believe it. I asked her why, and she said, "Well, I'm not actually pregnant, so I'm sorry you kinda broke up with your girlfriend for no reason." I didn't understand. I said in shock, "But the test was positive." And Jenny said, "Oh man, I was gonna tell you sooner or later. Actually, the test wasn't even mine. I borrowed it from a pregnant woman. I just wanted to get my own back on Max and prove to him that other guys also want me and that I can live without him." Oh my God, was she for real? I couldn't believe it. So I said to her, "So, you used me?" Then she almost laughed and said, "Well, duh. I mean, get real. We barely know each other. Why would we get married?" "Yeah, well done. You got me," I bitterly said. "Thanks," Jenny replied with a blank face. Then she just got up and left. I felt sick. Turned out Jenny was just a liar. She'd done all this just to get back to her ex. She played me like a fool, and I'd fallen for it. Poor Stella. How could I have treated her like that? And that's when I realized I deserved it. I'd treated Stella so badly, and now Jenny had done the same thing to me. Stella had always been there for me. She was the sweetest girl ever, and my stupid wandering eyes had led me to Jenny. Well, it served me right. But I had to apologize to Stella, even if she didn't forgive me. I couldn't live with myself knowing how much I'd messed up. So it's true what they say. You reap what you sow. I certainly learned that the hard way. And I can't blame anyone but myself. Lesson well and truly learned.
Now, where is her turquoise scarf? That will definitely complete my look. I was raiding Mom's closet to find it when I accidentally dropped a belt on the floor. But strangely enough, it made a really weird sound. So I gave it a few knocks. Wait, it did sound like the ground was hollow. I took a closer look. And oh my God, there was a hidden hatch or something in my mom's closet. Of course, I had to figure this out. So after a few attempts, I finally managed to open it and found a big wooden box. Why was she keeping something a secret from us? I took a deep breath and I opened the box. There were some old pics of my mom when she was younger, an old teddy bear, and some cassette tapes. Why on earth did she have to hide these? I dug even deeper and found a stack of letters. All of them were from the same address. Hang on, I knew that place. It was an orphanage just outside the city. So far, nothing made sense to me, so obviously I had to read them. They were all from this orphanage sister called Anna Maria. She kept writing about some girl named Eliza, and the more I read, I eventually realized that this girl, Eliza, was my mom's daughter. That meant I had a half-sister? I couldn't believe it. And from the sounds of things, my mom hadn't seen Eliza since the day she'd dropped her at the orphanage. So my mom didn't even know what she looked like after all these years? This was insane! How could mom have done this? Not to mention the fact my dad is a politician, so I'd been raised to always be a good person, just like them. But after what I just found out, I didn't know what to believe anymore. This is so absurd. But one thing was for sure, I had to find Eliza. The next day after school, I went to the orphanage. I told Anna Maria everything, and then she said that Eliza had left when she turned 18, but that she came back every weekend to help out. She then gave me Eliza's home address. I followed Google Maps and ended up in a seriously creepy neighborhood. As I knocked on her door, a billion questions ran through my head. What if she didn't want anything to do with us? What if she hated me because I stole this great life that was supposed to be hers? But there was no backing down now. As soon as the door opened, I froze. Could this really be my half-sister? Standing there was this tall, mysterious-looking girl. I was trembling as I said, "Hi, are you Eliza?" She just gave me a skeptic look, then replied, "Why? Who are you?" I couldn't hold back my tears and said, "I can't believe I found you. I'm Alicia, your half-sister." Eliza looked shocked and then said, "Oh, okay, calm down. Come on in, then we'll talk." I sat on the couch and told her everything. Then she began to tell me how miserable her life was, how she worked 4 jobs and it still wasn't enough to pay the bills. Gosh, I felt so guilty hearing all of this. How was it fair that I had a carefree, happy life and she'd been left all alone? I couldn't leave Eliza like that. I had to do something. After that, I rushed home and dragged Mom to my room so I could speak to her privately. I confronted her, and at first she denied it, but she eventually burst into tears and admitted everything. I couldn't believe my ears when I heard the whole story. When she was 18, she'd given birth to Eliza, but Eliza's dad wouldn't take any responsibility. So my mom decided to raise Eliza on her own. It was tough for her, as she didn't have a decent job. Then after about 6 months, my dad appeared and showed interest in her, and because he came from a wealthy family, my mom jumped at the chance to be with him. However, she thought that if he knew about Eliza, he wouldn't be keen. So with a heavy heart, she decided to send Eliza to the orphanage. Ever since then, she'd sent a letter to Anna Maria every year on Eliza's birthday. But she asked her not to send any photos of Eliza, as it was too painful to see. I couldn't believe my mom gave up her daughter for money. I begged my mom to meet up with Eliza. She at least owed her that. I explained how miserable Eliza's life was, and how she didn't deserve that. Finally, my mom agreed. So the next day, she picked me up from school and we went to Eliza's. As soon as my mom saw her, they were hugging and crying, and my mom was shocked at the shabby state of Eliza's place and immediately told her to come live with us. Oh, wow, Mom! I'm glad that we're reunited, but wasn't that decision too impulsive? What about Dad? Well, of course, he was super shocked. My mom sat him down and explained who Eliza was, but he didn't take it well, and they ended up getting into a huge fight, which resulted in my dad moving out. I couldn't believe it. So, from that moment on, it was just me, my mom, and Eliza. I missed my dad so much, but it felt kind of nice to suddenly have a sister. I'd always wanted a sibling. We could hang out together, gossip, go shopping. OMG! This was going to be so much fun. But turns out it wouldn't be as fun as I'd hoped. One night, Eliza was watching a movie. I sat down next to her and said, "Oh man, I love this movie, but I can't stand the female lead. Her voice is so annoying." I turned to check on Eliza's reaction, but she stayed stiff as a board. So I continued. "In fact, she sounds just like my friend Kayla." Still no replying from Eliza. In fact, she didn't even look at me. Was she even listening? Well, clearly she was, because a few days later, my friends came over, including Kayla. And when Eliza passed us, she said, "Bet that annoying Kayla girl you told me about isn't here, right?" Oh my God. I literally froze. How could she say that right in front of everyone? In front of Kayla? I was mortified. And the worst part was that Kayla didn't want to be my friend anymore after that. Even my other friends stopped hanging out with me. They thought I was just another mean girl. And that wasn't all. Eliza started acting really weird. One day I came home from school to find her in my bedroom looking at my old photos. Then when she saw me, she said in a creepy voice, "You're so lucky you weren't abandoned like me." My God, that gave me chills. Then later that night, I overheard her asking our mom if she could get an allowance to make up for lost time. Oh, wow. But that was only fair, right? Well, the next day, I couldn't find my fave lipstick. And given that Eliza recently had unannounced visits to my room, I went to ask her. But she just shrugged and said, "Yeah, I took it. So what?" Whoa. Since when did she become so rude? Hang on, she was also wearing my floral dress. That was it. I'd had enough. I went straight to my mom and told her what Eliza had done. I expected my mom to be on my side, but she wasn't. She told me to be more understanding as Eliza wasn't used to being around other people, so she needed some time to adapt. That's ridiculous. And then it got even worse. She started to target my dad. "You should divorce him. The way he just left you like that, what an awful husband," she told my mom when the two of them were preparing dinner. "You could claim ownership of everything. You just need to prove that he's cheating on you, or that he's corrupt or something. I mean, he's a politician, so I'm sure he's doing at least one of those things." I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing. I stormed into the room and started shouting at Eliza to stop trash-talking my dad. Then I turned to Mom. "Don't listen to her poisoned lies." But Mom just sighed and replied, "Eliza isn't entirely wrong. Your dad did just leave us, and he hasn't even called. Clearly, he's having an affair." OMG, that snake was brainwashing my mom. A few days later, I saw an article that my dad was charged for corruption. How was that even possible? My dad is a good man. There must be a misunderstanding or something. Could it be something to do with Eliza? "It was you, wasn't it? You accused my dad of corruption." I stormed in and screamed at Eliza. My mom was shocked and said, "Alicia, what are you talking about?" So I told my mom that Eliza must have planned this, and my mom said, "Don't be absurd. She has nothing to gain from that. Stop speaking nonsense and apologize to Eliza." Mom, I think I know what this is about. Alicia hates me, so she's starting to make up lies about me. In fact, you should be careful that she isn't a pathological liar or something. Or maybe even worse, she could have a mental disorder. My mom then said, "You're right, sweetie. Alicia, you need help. I'm going to make a hospital appointment for you." What? Was she serious? I tried to convince her that I was fine, but she wouldn't listen. I then turned to Eliza. "You won't get away with this." The next day, my mom tried to get me to go to the hospital, but I locked my bedroom door and refused to leave. But it didn't take long for her to find the spare key, and this time she came back with some dudes next door to help hold me down. I tried my best to break free, but it was hopeless. At that exact moment, I heard my dad's voice. "Let her go." I looked up and saw my dad was with a woman. My mom looked horrified and said, "How dare you bring your mistress into our home?" But my dad said, "It's not what it looks like, honey. This is Eliza, the real Eliza. That woman over there is an imposter. Her real name is Kim." OMG! I knew something was wrong with her. You might be wondering why my dad suddenly appeared. Well, I called him the day before and asked him to investigate Eliza, as I had a feeling there was something fishy going on. He went to the orphanage to get more info, and the sisters there kept saying Eliza was the sweetest woman, and that if he waited, he could meet her. Well, then the real Eliza turned up, and that's when my dad found out the truth. Turns out Kim was once Eliza's roommate. Eliza had moved out, but the sisters at the orphanage didn't know this, so they still gave me the old address. Eliza knew about my mom the whole time as she'd found the letters, but she was still mad about being abandoned, so wasn't ready to meet her. She told Kim everything about my family and how wealthy we were, so when I went by the old address and asked about Eliza, Kim seized the opportunity to steal Eliza's identity. My dad pointed at Kim and said, "I'll give you 10 seconds to get out of my house or I'll call the police. Don't you ever come near my family again." Kim fled immediately, and we never saw her again. As for the real Eliza, well, that was quite the reunion. At first it didn't go well, but Gradually, Eliza opened up to my mom, and of course, my dad's corruption charges were dropped after he was found innocent. He also forgave my mom and moved back in. Eliza visits us often, and I have to say, it's exactly what I hoped having a big sister would feel like. I'm so glad we're all reunited now.
Really? You're from Korea? No way. You sound just like a native speaker.
Richard jumped up in surprise as I told him I came from South Korea. Yeah, I'm 100% Korean, I answered him, giggling. I had spent hours every day practicing my English. Guess it has paid off. But that was 6 years ago already. I'm Jenny, by the way, and I'm Korean. At the time I was 21, I joined an online English speaking club where I first met Richard, who never in a million years did I think I'd fall in love with. But that's exactly what happened. Ever since that very first class, we started talking every day, and the sparks between us were undeniable. He always mentioned how he wished I could be in the Czech Republic with him, and I found myself daydreaming about our future wedding. Okay, so I was getting ahead of myself, but he was just so amazing. After a month of talking nonstop, I realized I was probably going to fail college if I didn't start setting my priorities straight. But all I could think about was him. And whenever we weren't chatting, I was stalking him on social media. And every time I saw him tagged with another girl, I got so jealous. This couldn't be healthy. I mean, I hadn't even met him in real life, but still, we continued to fall for each other. And he even introduced me to his two best friends, Anastasia and Pavel, via video chat. But not as blossoming as my love life, I was failing miserably at college. I'd always been the one who laughed at my lovesick friends, and now I was no better than them. This wasn't right. Something had to change. So even though it was killing me inside to do this, one night before sitting down on my desk to work on my assignment, I just picked up my phone and blocked his WhatsApp, deactivated my Facebook, and all without letting him know. Yep, I full-on ghosted him. It was such a hard decision, because that night, instead of getting anything done for the assignment, I found myself lying in bed with a tear-soaked pillow. It hurt so much, but I had to think about my future. My parents would kill me if I didn't get a good job. I couldn't let them down. Anyway, Pavel messaged me a few days later saying Richard had gone totally crazy and he'd never seen him this upset before. He barely ate anything and would drink all day. He's not much different from a zombie now. But I stayed unfazed. Bet he'd be okay, though. He was young and handsome, and girls were always after him. He'd get over me soon. And I'd get over him, right? If only it were that easy. I missed him every single day. Even though we'd been thousands of miles apart, he somehow always made me feel so safe, like he was right there next to me. What had I done? I'd ruined everything. Ugh! Instead of wasting time overthinking, it'd be better to put all my energy into my studies for now, right? And it worked. When graduation came around, I was the top student in my class and even got accepted on an exchange program in Australia. Without even thinking, I texted Richard to tell him the good news. I apologized for disappearing on him and said it had messed with my mind because I hadn't expected to fall for him so hard. I had just needed some time to finish my studies, but now I was ready to reconnect again. Well, he'd seen my messages, but there was no reply. It felt like someone had punched me in the heart. Hours later, he finally replied and said,
"Sorry, Jenny. I'll get in touch soon. Now isn't the best time."
I couldn't believe the words I was reading. I could actually hear the sound of my heart shattering, but it served me right. I was the one who'd gotten rid of him. He deserved better. But still, I stalked him every day online, and then I realized the only way to solve this would be to fly to the Czech Republic and find him. First, though, I had my exchange program in Australia. I bought a new phone and got a new number for the trip to leave my old one in Korea for my uncle who was always complaining about his outdated phone. Those 3 months in Australia were awesome, and I got my mind off things for a little. I was ready to start fresh when I got back from the trip, until my uncle told me that someone had texted me on my old phone, but because he didn't know English, he didn't know if it was for me or not. I immediately checked it, and there was a message from Richard that said,
"Jenny, I'm so sorry for my last message. I miss you so much. Your smile, your eyes, your voice. I hope you can give me another chance. Love, Richard."
OMG! Months had passed since he'd sent it, and the worst part of all is that my uncle had read the message, and so it said seen. This was a disaster. Okay, but I had to focus on the positive. He missed me. Maybe it wasn't too late. I tried to call him, but he didn't answer, so I texted him and explained what had happened. He finally replied and said he thought I'd given up on him. I'd never give up on him. We then had a proper phone call. I am still thinking about you all the time. Why didn't you send me a Facebook message? The words tumbled out of my mouth in a rush, as if I was afraid I would lose contact with him again in any sec. Suddenly, he went all quiet, and then he told me he'd recently met someone, and that he hoped I'd understand and still want to be friends. I felt devastated. Why was it so hard for us? But in the end, there was no other choice for me. I just wished him well and hung up. All I could do now was move on. It was time to find someone else to date. Clearly, Richard and I weren't meant to be. My heart hurt, but I found a job and threw myself into it, giving it all my attention. Eventually, I got promoted, and after 5 years, I was able to help my parents pay off their debt. I even moved up to a management position. Of course, during this time, I dated a bit, but I couldn't make any of the relationships last. I just missed Richard all the time. I kept dreaming of us spending Christmas together. It was so frustrating. I mean, it had been 5 years, and we hadn't spoken at all. Why couldn't I just get over him? I occasionally went on his Facebook page, but all I could see was his profile pic that remained the same for years. I'd unfriended Anastasia and Pavel, too, so I couldn't stalk them either. For all I knew, he could be someone's husband now. Maybe even a dad. And yet still, I never gave up hope that maybe we'd meet in real life, our paths would cross, and we'd finally get to be together. I couldn't stop thinking about this. And then 3 weeks before Christmas, I got a new following request on Instagram. I couldn't believe it. It was Pavel. And he was now married to Anastasia. This made me so happy. And he told me they were going on their honeymoon to Korea and hoped to see me. OMG, this was so exciting. I desperately wanted to ask him about Richard, but I was terrified to hear that he had kids or something. Anastasia messaged me too and asked how I was doing. I told her I was still single because I worked all the time. Hey, there was no way I could tell her it was because I was still obsessed with Richard. Anyway, the week flew by, and finally I was at the airport awaiting to meet Pavel and Anastasia in real life. They both looked so sweet, and I gave them the biggest hugs. After hugging them, I noted someone standing behind them. OMG. Was that Richard? What was he doing there? I was so stunned I couldn't move. It was really him. Pavel broke the silence by saying,
"We brought Richard along for you, Jenny. Feel free to hit him, bite him, kick him, or whatever you want to do if you think he deserves it."
Out of complete shock, I just burst into tears. It had been 6 long years of total silence, and now here he was, looking at me. I asked myself, could I hug him? But I didn't even get a chance to answer my thought because he ran towards me and picked me up in his arms, squeezing me tightly. Then he whispered in my ear,
"I'm so sorry, Jenny. Please don't cry. I'm here. I won't leave you. I promise."
Could I trust him, though? I was still in shock as I drove them to their hotel, and then again later when I drove to take them out for some Korean food. I was nervous about hanging out with them all, but we seriously had the best night eating, drinking, and laughing. The next day, Pavel and Anastasia would start their honeymoon. So maybe then Richard and I would have some time alone together to talk about whatever was left between us. After dropping them back at their hotel, I was driving away when suddenly I saw Richard running back towards me. He said he wanted to tell me something, so I pulled over and we sat down on a bench to talk. I listened as he told me that over the past 6 years he tried to date other girls, but it never worked out because I was always in the back of his mind. He said he'd spend most of his time working so he could save up to visit me or buy me a ticket so I could come and visit him. It had taken him longer than he'd hoped because his parents had got divorced and he'd been looking after his mom who was super depressed. A few months later, she was diagnosed with cancer, and so he'd had to work even harder to help her pay for treatment. After 3 long years of fighting, she sadly passed away. And ever since then, he'd been feeling so lonely and sad. One day, he asked Pavel to contact me somehow, and when he found out I was still single, he was over the moon and decided it was finally time to come to Korea and see me. He said seeing me in real life had made him fall even more in love with me, which he hadn't thought was even possible. Then he hugged me tight and I couldn't stop crying. We spent Christmas together, just like I always dreamt of. And well, the rest is history. Here I am now, packing my bags to fly to the Czech Republic to see Richard. I can't wait to meet his family. And you'll never believe it, but we're even planning our wedding. The big question is, where do we live? Should I go there, or should he move to Korea? To be honest, it doesn't matter. As long as we're together, it'll be perfect. So it's true what they say. If something is meant to be, it'll be. Even if it takes a year or 6. All I know is that I'm glad I had the patience because I've never been happier. Hi, everyone. Have you ever had someone get revenge on you? It's not fun, right? Well, this is my story about revenge, but with a twist. You won't believe who my prankster turned out to be. Oh, let me introduce myself. I'm Audrey, and I'm 24. To say I've had an unhappy life would be an understatement. Firstly, my dad ditched my mom for another woman. And not long after that, my mom passed away from a serious illness. Basically, my entire life fell apart in a matter of months, and I was still too young at that time. It was tough growing up, and I always think that my life could never turn the page again. But on one fine day, someone popped into my life and changed everything. His name was Jim, and he was 7 years older than me, and he seriously turned my life around. He lived in another city, but he often came to my city on business trips. We fell for each other quickly. That happiness didn't last long, though. One day I was working in the clothes store when a girl around the same age as me came in. She wanted my help to choose some dress, but she was pretty rude to me, and I kept catching her staring at me with evil eyes. Who was she? And why was she treating me like that? Finally, after about 2 hours, she made up her mind and picked up only a tie that she wanted to buy for her husband instead. I was relieved to get rid of her, but shocked when I saw the name on her credit card. Jim Stewart. Her husband had the exact same name as my boyfriend. What a coincidence. She must have caught me staring at the card because she suddenly said, "Yes, Jim is my husband. Now stay away from him." What? Her husband? My Jim. Before I even had a chance to react, she turned to everyone in the store and said, "This girl is a gold digger, and she's trying to break up my marriage." I was shocked. I tried to explain that it wasn't true, but she wouldn't listen to me. She just stormed out, and I was left standing there hearing people whispering about me. It was the most humiliating moment of my life. I immediately ran to the staff room and called Jim. I was really hoping it had all been a big misunderstanding, but I could tell from Jim's tone that it was the truth. He told me he'd lied to me, and that he actually lived in the same city. He just made up the business trip stuff so he wouldn't have to see me often. Then he said, "Audrey, I honestly love you. I'm serious about us." Hang on, was he for real? It was ridiculous. I was disgusted by him. How could he treat me like that? I hung up and felt horrified. It brought back horrible memories of the woman who stole my dad away from my mom. I didn't want to be that woman. The next day, I moved out of the house Jim had rented for me. I didn't want to be associated with that loser anymore. But life works in mysterious ways. The day I moved into my new house, I saw Jim's wife. And you won't believe it. It seemed that she just moved in next door too. Was this some kind of joke? As soon as she saw me, she smirked and said, "Wow, what a coincidence. Hello, neighbor. I'm Linda." Seeing her unpacking her stuff all by herself, I couldn't help but wonder where Jim was. But then I thought maybe Linda had ended things with him and had moved here alone. I hope so anyways. I'd hate to have Jim as a neighbor. So that's when my new life began. And it has been crazy ever since. From that first week of living there, Linda started pranking me. It all began with her throwing trash into my yard. I even caught her doing it, and she just grinned and said, "Oops, my hand slipped." Then she walked away laughing. It made me furious. And that was just the beginning. One weekend, a delivery guy rocked up on my porch with 10 extra large pizzas. I tried to explain I hadn't ordered them, and that's when Linda appeared at my door and said, "Oh, thanks for ordering me dinner, Audrey. I'm starving." Then she grabbed 5 of the pizzas and ran to her house, leaving me there with a bill of $100. Jeez, it was so annoying, and I had no option but to pay. Linda was too much. Seriously. As much as her pranks drove me up the wall, I also felt sorry for her. I knew what it was like to have someone you love stolen away from you. She must have hated me so much for ruining her marriage, even though it hadn't been my fault. I decided to just put up with her pranks. She'd get over it eventually, and it's not like they were harming me, right? Well, one night I heard the doorbell. I wasn't expecting anyone and was surprised to see a young guy standing there with a poster that said, "I agree to be your boyfriend. Come out with me." I was totally puzzled and told him he had the wrong house, but then he showed me the address on the other side. It was my address. What on earth? I told him I wasn't interested, but he tried to grab my hand and said, "Come on, girl, don't be shy." I told him if he didn't leave me alone, I'd call the police. So luckily he ran away. Needless to ask, I knew for sure that was Linda's joke. But this time she had taken it too far. I decided to go over and have a word with her once and for all. As I was walking to her house, I saw someone familiar on the other side of the road. I couldn't believe it. It was my dad? So many years had passed, and he'd completely changed, but there was no doubt it was him. I suddenly blurted out, "Dad?" But I didn't know what to do next. I was just thinking about my next move when I felt someone behind me. I turned around and saw Linda. She just smirked at me and walked away. What was her problem? Did she hear what I just said? I was so shocked at seeing my dad, I ran back into my house. I hated him for what he'd done to my mom. But he was still my dad, and I wanted to know if he was okay and what he was doing here. I barely slept that night as I couldn't stop thinking about my dad. The next morning, I was sitting by the window when he appeared again. This time, he was with Linda, and she was holding his arm. What was she doing with my dad? Why were they so close? Later that day, I saw him again, and this time, he and Linda were hugging. OMG, were they dating? Maybe Linda had heard me call him dad, and now she was flirting with him to truly get revenge on me. This was too much. The thought of Linda as a stepmom made me want to puke. I waited and waited, but he was inside her house and there was no sign of him leaving. Eventually he left, and as soon as he was in his car, I ran over to her house. I was shaking as I knocked on the door, and as Linda opened it, I said, "You are way too much. Can you just stop with the revenge already?" Linda looked confused and said, "What the heck are you talking about?" Linda still didn't seem to get it, and I was about to explain when I heard footsteps. I turned around and my dad was right there. He said, "What's the matter, Linda? Why are you fighting with this stranger?" Huh? Stranger? Didn't he recognize me? Then Linda butted in and said, "It's okay, Dad. We're just having a misunderstanding here." What? Dad? Is he your dad? Really? I stammered. "Yeah, why? What's the matter?" She said, "Linda, you don't need to lie to me. I know you're dating my dad to get revenge on me," I continued. "Whoa, hold on. What do you mean your dad?" Linda gasped. At that, my dad looked confused too, and walked to me and asked if he could look at my hand. After seeing my birthmark, he started crying and hugging me. "Audrey, it's you. It's really you." I didn't know how to react, so I just let him hug me. It had been so long since anyone had held me like this. Ever since my mom had died, I'd tried to be strong and keep it together, but suddenly I couldn't hold back anymore. I burst into tears in his arms. We stood like that for a long time, and eventually he took me into Linda's house and told me the story. It turned out, after he left me and my mom, he got tricked by that woman, and he was so ashamed, he decided to move to another city and start over. He was working hard on a construction site one day when he got injured, so he ended up in hospital, and that's when he met Linda. She'd been in a car accident and needed a blood transfusion urgently. She has a pretty rare blood type, but luckily my dad had the same type and he volunteered to give her a transfusion. After that, they became quite close, and seeing as Linda had lost both her parents in the car accident, my dad eventually adopted her. I couldn't believe it. My dad had been through so much, and this whole time, I thought he was off living his life with a rich woman. I felt so bad for him and decided to leave the past behind and forgive him. As for Linda, she was also left confused by this coincidence. So she left the room to process everything, while I and Dad took time to catch up on our lives. Later, Linda prepared dinner for us three, and before we digged in, she shyly grabbed my hand and said, "Audrey, I've been so awful to you. I'm sorry. I know you aren't the one responsible for my divorce, but I still felt upset, and that's why I played all those pranks. That was so childish, right? Please forgive me, sister." We laughed it off, then hugged each other to make peace. I couldn't believe it. After all these years of being lonely, suddenly I had a sister, and my dad was back. My life had finally turned a corner, and I almost laughed at the thought that it was all because of meeting Jim. At least one good thing had come out of that disastrous relationship.
Have you ever wondered what being a parent would be like? How about if you suddenly became a parent and your parent became a teenager? Well, it happened to me, and I'm here to tell you all about it. Hello, everybody. My name's Heaven, and I'm 17. But don't let my name deceive you, because this Heaven came straight out of hell. I suppose I've never been the easiest child. Back when I was younger, I had a lot of temper tantrums and outbursts. Once, when I was 8, this boy took the green crayon I wanted, so I snatched it off him, then snapped it in half. He burst into tears, and the teacher got involved and tried to put me in the timeout corner, so I screamed at her and even gave her some bruises. The teacher rang my parents and told them this was the last strike and I'd been expelled. When they picked me up, my dad just sighed and stayed quiet, but my mom yelled at me. "Well, I hope you're happy now, Heaven. You've brought shame to our family, and now we've got to find another school willing to take you." Now, 9 years later, and the relationship between Mom and me is worse than ever. We just don't see eye to eye on anything. To be honest, we're like strangers. She has absolutely no idea what it feels like to be a teenager, and her super strict rules are ridiculous, such as no boyfriends until I'm 18, no parties, no drinking, no staying out past 8:30 p.m., no unhealthy foods. No, 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 no. She was such a fun killer. Jeez, who was she to try and control me like this? Ugh. Me being me, I tried to find my way around these stupid rules. I made out I was having a girly sleepover at my friend Clara's house, then ended up going to a party. I said I was at an after-school club, when really, I went on a date with a boy. And I chucked the healthy packed lunches she made me in the trash and ordered a greasy burger and loaded cheese fries instead. I hated the fact that Mom was ruining my life with all of her dumb rules, and she hated the fact that I didn't respect her enough to follow her dumb rules. Because of this, we argued. A lot. And my little bro John and my dad often found themselves stuck in the middle. I guess that they couldn't stand the icy atmosphere between us. So eventually, they themselves prepared for a family day out. And it was certainly going to fix nothing. Her rules still followed us to the park, and she'd even stopped me talking to this really cute guy and shouted at me to go mind John. Ugh! I wasn't here to be a maid! Then, when we got home, she insisted I help her cook dinner. So I poured Dad a beer, and when I thought Mom wasn't looking, I slurped back the rest of the can. Suddenly, my mom screamed out, "What do you think you're doing? You're too young to be drinking!" I just rolled my eyes and said, "What? It was a tiny sip. Stop being so uptight, else you'll turn into a wrinkly old prune." Then I threw the can on the floor and walked off. She gave me a fierce glare, but I didn't care. How could she be just so serious? So when we were all sitting around the table for dinner, I could feel the tension between me and Mom. She passed John a plate full of chicken nuggets, but she passed me a plate heaped full of broccoli. Yuck! Where are my nuggets? I asked. Mom replied, "John is a growing boy. You, however, need to eat some vegetables, as you're getting a little chubby." How dare she? I wasn't even fat. In fact, I'm so skinny, I could be a model. If anyone needed to watch their weight, it was her, not me. She was the one squeezing herself into her old pair of skinny jeans. So I grabbed my plate of broccoli and threw it in the trash. Mom got up and said, "Fine, go hungry. See if I care. And you can clean up after yourself from now on." I yelled back, "Ridiculous! There's nothing in my stomach and you're giving me chores? Is this child abuse?" But then my dad startled us by slamming his fist on the table. "That's enough! Both of you! Start acting like grown-ups!" We both muttered out sorry. Then Dad came up with his bonkers idea. "Okay, so if you two cannot live in harmony, why don't you trade places?" Mom and I were kind of confused. "What do you mean?" I said to him. "Well, it's simple. Heaven, you'll switch places with Mom and do the housework, shopping, making dinner, and taking care of John, and so on. While Ariana," he looked at Mom, "you'll relive your teenage years and go to school. Let's say, for 2 days." Mom looked thrilled at the prospect of being me. As for me, I wasn't convinced. I mean, who likes doing chores? Besides, tomorrow at school was class picnic day, which meant no classes, lots of tasty food, and plenty of time to stare at cute boys. But Mom seemed so excited at the idea of being me, so I decided I could take advantage of this. "Does this mean I don't have to follow any stupid rules?" I asked, and Mom and Dad nodded in agreement. "Okay then, all the strict rules are gone." Does this mean I can eat chocolate in bed? John asked. I grinned. You betcha! Mom just shrugged and said, It's okay, Mom. Now I have to prepare stuff for my picnic. And she excitedly ran upstairs. This would be a breeze, right? I mean, how hard could being Mom actually be? The next morning, John woke me up extra early and insisted I make him breakfast. Yawn. While I was pouring cereal into a bowl for him, Mom appeared. She was wearing her hat backwards. Geez, someone seriously needed to tell her it wasn't the 90s anymore. Have fun, Ariana. I winked at her. You too, Mom. She winked back. I watched her through the window. As she got on the school bus, she turned to me and did the peace out sign. Geez, could she be any more uncool? Whatever, she could be as cringy as she wanted. I didn't care, as I had the whole day at home alone. Or at least, until I had to pick up my bro from school. I didn't bother loading up the dishwasher, and I sidestepped past the massive pile of laundry and decided to spend the morning on the couch watching a chick flick and painting my nails. This was the life. A few hours passed, and I was so bored and hungry, so I went into the kitchen to look for food. But the cupboards were empty. Then I noticed a shopping list and some money on the counter. Reluctantly, I walked to the local store, but I ignored the list and bought lots of snacks. Hey, I was Mom, so I made the rules. In the end, I found myself so bored that I actually ended up doing the laundry. I didn't really know what I was doing, so I threw everything into the machine, fiddled with the dial, and hoped for the best. Then my phone rang. It was Clara. So I answered and she said, Hey, why is your mom here instead of you? I told her about the switch up, then asked her what my mom was up to. She was quiet for a second, then said, well, she's definitely enjoying the picnic. In fact, she's showing Mrs. Puller her dabbing skills. What? My mom was dabbing? Which no one did anymore. And in front of our ancient science teacher? Was she trying to humiliate me? Whatever, my mom could get on with it. I had house chores to do. Geez, what's with chores? They seriously never seem to end. By the end of the day, I was so exhausted that I ordered takeout for everyone, then slumped in front of the TV. I finally had the option to stay out late, but I didn't have the energy to do it. Then, the next day, when I was doing yet more house chores, my friend Patrick sent me a photo. It was Mom. She was wearing a cheerleader's outfit that exposed her midriff. What? She was just at a casual football match. No one dressed up for that. Then Patrick sent me another picture. In it, Mom was fiddling with her hair and touching some jock's shoulder. OMG. Was she trying to flirt with him? Whatever. I didn't have time for this. I had to go pick John up from school, then go to the grocery store to get supplies for dinner. We arrived home to find Mom slumped on the couch, surrounded by empty wrappers and cans. On seeing me, she said, Oh, you're back. I told John to go to his room, then I stormed over to Mom and said, What's with all this mess? Clean it up! She just smirked at me and said, Nah, you never clean it up, so why should I? After all, we have switched places, remember? She finished her beer, then burped loudly before she threw the can at my feet, then walked off. This was so annoying. I'd already tidied the living room once today, and now I had to do it again. My mom was so unfair. Then, when I finally managed to grab 5 minutes to relax with a hot chocolate, loud thudding sounds were coming from upstairs. It was her music. It was so loud, it made the ceiling shake. Geez, she was so annoying. Then suddenly, it dawned on me. This was how I acted. Mom was just being me. So, okay, I guess I was a little harsh at times. I suppose being Mom wasn't as easy as it looks. So I decided to make amends by making a delicious dinner. But there was one problem. I can't cook. In fact, the last time I tried to cook, I set the crepes and the pan on fire. So, for safety purposes, I asked Clara and Patrick to help me. They had cooking class, so they knew what to do. We created a feast of barbecue ribs, burgers, cornbread, salad, grape punch, and for dessert, a chocolate lava cake and blueberry pie. I swear they looked so good, I wanted to drool all over them. Mom came downstairs chewing her gum and scrolling through her phone, but then she looked at the food and stuttered, How did you make all of this? Not even I could make this many meals. I just shrugged and said, I had a little help from my friends. No biggie. Then I stopped in front of Mom and said, I'm sorry that I've been a bad daughter. I know you do a lot for me, and I promise I'll be better from now on. Mom started crying and said, I'm sorry too. I know it isn't easy being your age. I can't keep up with the trends. I thought dabbing was popular. Anyway, from now on, I'll be fair to you, and we'll have fun together. After that, we hugged it out. Then my dad stood up and said, Well, now anyone want to trade places with me? John immediately raised his hand, and all could see his eyes light up. Soon, we all burst out laughing, thinking about one day John will go to work and talk about dinosaurs at the meetings. Meanwhile, my dad is building a Lego castle for John's kindergarten girlfriend. My family is now happier than ever. It's all thanks to my dad's crazy idea. You should never disrespect your parents, otherwise you might just find yourself living in their shoes. Literally. And trust me, I'll take strict rules and being nagging parents any day if the alternative is grocery shopping and house chores. Ugh! Do you know what it's like to be a pampered princess? Well, I do, because my dad's a billionaire, so the high life's mine. Not only did we live in a 5-story mansion, but I grew up never having to lift one of my pretty, perfect, delicate fingers. I'm Sophia, and throughout my childhood, I had everything done for me. There was a maid to brush my hair, make my bed, and even do my homework for me. I didn't even have to search my walk-in wardrobe for a daily outfit, as I had my own personal stylist for that. So what? I'm spoiled. But I can't help being so perfect. I'm far too gorgeous to be stuck in a stuffy classroom studying. Not when I could be partying or schmoozing with the stars at swanky cocktail balls. But then, one morning, after a particularly crazy night out, I arrived home with a makeup-smudged face and only one shoe. Dad frowned at me, and then he said, Sophia, you can't carry on like this. You're going to college, starting next week. But, Dad, I don't need to go to college. School sucks. Plus, we have enough money to last us several lifetimes. Let's just travel and have fun. But Daddy insisted I couldn't just sleep all day and party all night. Ugh! So, I decided to major in interior design for now. Some of the course was okay. I mean, I liked the pretty fabrics, but I just didn't see the point in being there. So, after a month, I dropped out and planned a long trip away with my besties. But there was one tiny problem, as paying for this trip would cost way more than my allowance could cover. So, I had no choice but to don my best puppy eyes look and ask my dad for money. Daddy, please. College just isn't for me. But I really feel that going away for a while will help clear my mind. He snorted. I highly doubt that, Sophia. You're lazy, self-centered, and you rely entirely on everyone to support you. You're 20, for God's sakes, so act like it. I pleaded back. But Daddy, I just want to have some fun with my friends. Then get a job and spend your own money on whatever you like. But if you carry on behaving this way, then don't expect any more handouts from me. You're lucky that I still haven't kicked you out, Sophia. But soon... What? That's so unreasonable. He was my father. It's his duty to support me. Jeez, did he not love me at all? I was so mad that I shouted, You're just some sad, selfish old man! Then I stormed out of there. I was instructing my maid to pack my suitcases when my mom came in and handed me a bank card, saying it's a secret between us two. Yay! Thanks, Mom. Now let the dream voyage begin. Wow, It really was heaven to me, with cocktails in the pool and lazy beach days. Well, at least, that was until my friends said they wanted a day exploring. It was hot and sticky out there, but I didn't want to be left alone, so I reluctantly tagged along. We ended up in this small forest area, and I chose to sit under a parasol while my friends went to take a dip in the nearby waterfall. Because, duh, I wasn't ruining my hair for anyone. I didn't understand how this could be anyone's definition of fun. I just hoped that my friends would hurry back. Then I heard footsteps. I turned around, thinking it was the girls, but instead, there were two men with balaclavas on. Oh no, this couldn't be good. I jumped up to my feet and began to run, but my designer sandals weren't made for swift exits, and soon they caught me. I screamed out as a smelly cloth went over my mouth. After that, the world began to darken around me. I flickered my eyes open. Geez, it was so sunny. Where were my sunglasses? That's when I heard two voices, and I remembered being kidnapped. I heard the one man say, "Got her phone?" The other replied, "Of course. I don't want to upset the boss." I was so scared that I pretended to still be unconscious. Then suddenly, I heard the sound of the engine starting. I opened my eyes and saw the men driving away. Now, I was all alone in some field. What? Why would anyone kidnap someone, then just leave them in the middle of nowhere? My friends must be so worried about me. I needed to contact them. But how? I had no idea where I was, and no phone. Ugh. I should find a way out of this deserted place first, then borrow someone's phone. The kidnappers had left a bag next to me, which had a bottle of water, some snacks, and some gross-looking sneakers in it. Yuck! But I had no choice but to put them on, as my sandals were now torn. Ew! I would need so many pedicures to recover from this. I took the bag with me and started walking. After what felt like hours of torture, a farmhouse finally came into view. I whooped with joy and knocked on the door, but no one answered. I know trespassing is wrong, but this was an emergency, so I pushed the door open and ventured inside. I was just going to make a quick phone call, then I'd leave. But then I accidentally stumbled and knocked over a vase. A smashing sound broke the silence. I panicked and was about to run away, but from upstairs, a man came down and shouted, "Stop! Thief!" Before I could explain, he grabbed my hand and pulled me back. I tried explaining that I wasn't a thief, but he gave me a skeptical look and said, "Well, in that case, you can leave once you've paid for my vase. That's a collectible." What? This ugly thing? Ugh. I told him I would as soon as I made a phone call, so he doubtfully passed me his cell. I stared at it. Turns out I have never cared to remember any of my friends' numbers. I then thought about calling my parents, but no way. I was mad at Dad, and asking for his help right now only meant accepting defeat. No, never. I told the man I would pay when I got home, but he refused to let me go. After a while of arguing, he forced me to stay and work for him until I paid it off. He even made up an agreement and made me sign it. And what other choice did I have? Yep, I was completely stuck here. This was the worst day of my life. He said his name was Manson. Then he showed me where I'd be staying. This had to be a joke. It was a barn. Literally. There was an uncomfortable-looking bed in there, and I could hear horses neighing in the barn next door. Was he kidding me? I was sitting there in despair when my stomach rumbled with hunger, so I barged into the kitchen and ordered Manson to make me some food. But he just pointed at the eggs by the stove and told me to make myself something to eat. Sure, I'd definitely do that. If I knew how to cook? Manson just sat there smirking while I threw the whole egg into the pan and then spent the next half hour trying to work out how to turn the stove on. In the end, I gave up and returned to my so-called room with an empty stomach. If you think that was bad, well, things soon got a lot worse. at 5 a.m., a noisy rooster woke me up, and then started my disastrous days at the farm. I accidentally dropped the bag of seeds onto the floor and got them in my hair, so the chickens chased me around the pen to get to them. I slipped over in the pigsty. Ew! I chipped a nail cleaning out the rabbit hutch. I even fell into horse manure. It was awful. Then on top of it all, Manson was so rude. He just laughed at me struggling with everything. But then one day, it all got too much for me. I was exhausted and felt so dizzy that I stumbled and broke 2 baskets of eggs. It really hurt so bad, and I was even in tears, thinking Manson would be mad. But instead, he ran over to check on me. Then, he even cooked me a nice meal and told me that I'd been doing a great job, despite the accidents. Whoa, what's with this personality change? So, maybe he wasn't as bad as I thought? Over the next few days, I actually found myself enjoying Manson's company. We sat by the fire pit and watched the sunset. We went horse riding, and I managed not to fall off. And he even taught me how to cook. That's when I realized 2 things. Firstly, I'd been a brat. I was lazy, selfish, and I took everything for granted. But now I realized that with hard work came reward. And secondly, I realized that I liked Manson a lot. So I decided to do something nice for him. I gave the barn a makeover. It was just simple things, really. I put a rug down, added some plants, hung up a few pictures and fairy lights. Then I dragged Manson over to have a look. He peered around the barn, then smiled.
"Sophia, this is so lovely."
Then he awkwardly looked down at his feet.
"Look, I need to tell you something. It's your dad. He hired those men to kidnap you, then paid me to let you stay here."
I laughed over that ridiculous joke, but then he continued.
"Your dad wanted you to change your outlook on life and understand the value of money. He only has your best interest at heart."
Wait, was this all just a setup? With teary eyes, I looked straight at Manson and said, "I was going to tell you that I have feelings for you, but I suppose you don't feel the same. I need to go. Please tell my father to send someone to pick me up ASAP, unless he's okay with me walking all the way back home without any phone or cash." Then I hurried out of there. He shouted after me, but I ignored him. I was so angry and upset. I continued walking until a car eventually pulled up alongside me. It was our family's driver. He took me home. Then I locked myself in my room, refusing to come out. It took a few days for me to calm down enough to go confront my father. And when I did, well, I found myself running into his arms and telling him how sorry I was. He looked so shocked. I finally realized that my dad only did that because he loves me, and he wanted me to see the true values of life. I told him I would resume my studies at college, but there was something else I needed to do first. I showed up at Manson's doorstep with some carrots for the horses and a new vase. On seeing him, he grinned, then gave me the biggest hug. Guys, life isn't all about designer clothes and expensive holidays. Sometimes a stinky farm full of even stinkier animals and a cute guy, well, that can be the best place in the world. As for the future, well, Manson and I are both taking it slow and seeing where it goes. I do have big plans for his farm, though. I'm helping him renovate the barns into holiday cottages so other people can sample the country life too. A part of me will always be a pampered princess, but as for the other part of me, well, it turns out she can make a mean egg bagel and outrun a pen full of chickens. Don't take life for granted. It doesn't matter how pretty and rich you are. Instead, there's far more to life than just that.
Hey, Alex! I felt someone tap on my shoulder. I turned around to see who it was and, it was Roxy, my crush, who also happened to be the most beautiful girl in the world. I figured I must have been in her way, so I quickly mumbled out, "Sorry," and stepped aside. But out of my surprise, she smiled at me and said, "So, a little birdie told me you like me? You know, I think it's cute you haven't made a move on me yet, not like most of the guys around here." I stared at her open-mouthed. Was I dreaming? I pinched myself to check. Nope, this was real. So I nodded my head and muttered out, yeah? "My friend's having a party at their frat house on Wednesday. You want to come?" Before I could reply, her friend Luke appeared, and grinning, he said, "Yeah, you just gotta come to this party." Roxy hit his arm while giving him a dirty look, then smiled at me. "So it's at number 19, starts at 9 p.m. I'll see you then?" I nodded in response, and she said, "Great, see you there." Then she winked at me before she walked off. So yeah, I'm Alex, your average second-year college student. And this is the story about how my crush tried to lure me into a seriously sinister trap. I guess I'm a normal guy. I'm not as rich and popular as the kids from the frat houses are. Instead, my room is in the regular dorms, and although I'm not ugly or unpopular or anything, I'm easily overlooked. So I kept my crush on Roxy a secret because she was way out of my league. She was so beautiful, this was crazy. How did she even find out that I liked her? I couldn't believe that she'd asked me out. This was mad. At first, I felt like the luckiest guy ever. But then as I watched Roxy walk back to her friends, I noticed them giggling, except for this one girl called Sophie. Meanwhile, Luke was making everyone high-five him. He was always a little odd, and he spoke to people in strange ways. Then I caught Sophie's eye, and she gave me a look that said, "Don't." Then she promptly looked away. Her jerky boyfriend Jack had his arm around her shoulder and was tugging on one of her trademark pigtails as he glugged back his drink. I had no idea what she saw in him. But what had her look been about? Back in my dorm, I discussed it with my roommate Ben, and he said it sounded like a setup. As much as I wanted it to be legit, my gut instinct was also saying that it was too good to be true. So the night of the party, I decided to take a look out my dorm window, as it's in the perfect location to get a clear view of the frat houses. I counted the houses down to number 19. Then I took out my binoculars, for which I used for field research studies, to take a closer look. The house had a large rainbow pride flag hanging from the two windows. This made me wonder why Roxy would want to go to a gay party. I saw a lot of feminine-dressed men, and the only two girls that I could spot were far from attractive. And it seemed like they were a couple. And then there was Luke in the front yard holding 2 drinks and looking around like he was waiting for someone. Where was Roxy? I decided to check her social media to see if she'd posted anything. And I noticed she'd left her location open. She was in a nightclub, Diego's. That was strange. So I gave the party a miss, and instead Ben and I went to a student bar. I told him about it, and he said it sounded like I dodged a bullet. The next day I was sitting with Ben and some of my other friends in the canteen when Roxy stormed over to me and yelled out, "How dare you stand me up? Who do you think you are?" Luke appeared and said, "Yeah, why not show?" I just shrugged and said, "Roxy, I know you weren't there. Your phone location's public. You were at Diego's." She hesitated, then said, Yeah, my friend borrowed my phone. But what you did was so creepy, you stalker." As if. Roxy was never without her phone, so I wasn't buying her story. This whole thing didn't make any sense, so I sort of mouthed out, "Whatever, Roxy," then carried on eating my lunch. After that, she started making my life a living hell. She told everyone that I was stalking her, so random students started coming up to me and telling me to leave her alone. Then someone covered the dorm corridors in leaflets with a picture of my face and the word "stalker" written across them. I knew Roxy was behind it. It was so weird. But Luke was worse. One time after class, he sneaked up on me, grabbed my arm, and said, "Hey Alex, why you bail on my party?" I told him that I saw the party from a distance and it wasn't my thing, so he replied, "Hey, you got a probs with me being gay?" I shook my head and told him I didn't, but he still wouldn't let go of my arm. I was relieved when he finally let go of me, and I hurried back to my dorm. On the way, I spotted Sophie sitting outside on the shared bathroom. Hang on, why was she in a flood of tears? I asked her if she was okay, but she told me to go away. Although I didn't want to put my nose where it shouldn't be. But I wasn't heartless, so I left her my bottle of water before I walked off. I said, "If you want to talk about it, I'm here for you." I was unlocking my dorm room when I heard someone cough behind me. I turned around to see Sophie standing there. She thanked me for the water and she said she wanted to talk. I led her into my room and she sat on my bed. And staring at her feet, she said in tears, "I caught Jack and Roxy by the locker rooms, but when I confronted them about it, they just shooed me away." I sat down next to Sophie and hugged her. This was horrible. It looks like I've been so wrong about Roxy. She wasn't my dream girl at all. Instead, she was a nightmare. Sophie continued. It gets worse. Roxy stole my assignment and submitted it as her own. It's due tomorrow and I don't have the time to write a new one. She started crying again. I passed her a tissue and said, We'll sort this out. There's no way she's getting away with it. That's horrible. So I told her to send an email to the college dean and to her course tutor explaining what happened. She'd attached the original assignment and all the notes she'd written about it. They both got back to us within minutes and said that they would look into this. Sophie looked so delighted, but then suddenly her smile dropped, and she fiddled with one of her pigtails as she said, Alex, there's something I need to tell you. Please don't hate me. Then she told me how the party Roxy had invited me to had been a trap. Roxy found out I had a crush on her, and she was embarrassed that an average guy like me dared to have feelings toward her. And she was adamant she needed to teach me a lesson. So that's when Luke said he would help, as he wanted to add me to his collection, so they hatched a plan. Roxy invited me to the party, and Luke was waiting for me with a spiked drink. Apparently, this was Roxy's way of silencing me, and making sure I didn't look at her in the same way ever again. Whoa, this was so dark. I shivered at the thought of what could have been. It was terrifying. Sophie also told me that she begged Roxy not to do this, but she got her friends to hold her down. Then she told her that if she intervened, they'd make her suffer. I comforted Sophie and told her that it wasn't her fault. I knew I couldn't just stay quiet on this, as they could do this to some poor other guy who dared to have a crush on her. So with Sophie's help, we wrote a letter to the dean and to the college security about what had happened. This wasn't going to be taken lying down. Sophie was terrified that Roxy and her friends would come after her, so I invited her back to my hometown for the weekend to get away from everyone and let things cool down. When we arrived back at college, news spread that Roxy had been expelled for stealing another student's work. As for Luke, the cops raided his frat house and found loads of banned substances hidden in there. It was so serious that it went to court, and they ended up in jail. As for Jack, he tried to guilt-trip Sophie as to why she should get Roxy expelled for dumb reasons, but she stopped talking to him anyway. I often think back to the night of the party and what could have been. My life would have been ruined, and what for? All because I dared to have a crush on a beautiful girl. I say good riddance. Some good has come out of this whole mess. Sophie and I grew closer and started dating. Now we've both graduated, and that's not all. We have 2 amazing kids together. I love my beautiful family with all my heart, and I just want to protect them from all the bad in this world. So in short, I don't think that just because you're beautiful, rich, and popular, that you get away with doing whatever you please. Regardless of age, sex, looks, and so on, everyone deserves to be treated with respect and compassion.
Hey Beans, welcome back to my channel. I'm so cranked to introduce today's special guest, my daughter Elle. Say hi, sweetie.
Hi, we're making butter from scratch today. I'm so excited.
Elle, can you please do this properly?
Mom, it's the 6th take already. I can't even feel my arms anymore. If you're still not satisfied, then film it yourself. Hey, I'm Elle, a high school student living in Wisconsin with my mom. From the outside, there's nothing out of the ordinary about us. Well, except that my mom's a vintage holic. See, she in fact became a famous YouTuber for her 1950s lifestyle. Living like this was such a hassle, but that's what puts food on our table, so I had to put up with it. However, sometimes Mom even insisted that I join in her videos, like today. Ugh. Not just that, whenever we went out together, she made me wear the cheesiest vintage dresses, so I wouldn't ruin her aesthetic. As a hip-hop dancer, it was torture. See? I sure look way better in these clothes. Oh dear, what are those awful threads? Here, try this. It's really the bee's knees. Bee's knees, she said? More like granny.
Ah, so pretty. Auntie, you have such excellent taste.
That's Daisy, my cousin, and also schoolmate, who gets along much better with my mom.
Jeez, I can't let this hideous dress go home with us.
If you like this so much, why don't you just take it instead, Daisy? Mom then walked to the counter with some more tacky clothes, ready to pay, but... Gee, where did I put it? Guess I'll come back another time. Oh, missing something, Mommy?
It's okay, Mrs. Fay. You're a regular, so you can pay us next time.
Wait, what? No! So now I had to wear this ugly dress to the boring event Mom was dragging me to. Because the more the merrier.
On the way there, Mom was talking a blue steak about how I should behave at the bash, when suddenly, huh? What now? Awesome! This must be the third time this hunk of junk has broken down this month. Isn't it fantastic? And we don't even have phones to call for help. Elle, I've told you, it'd be ridiculous to show up with smartphones while dressing like this. Besides, people used to live just fine without them. Stop relying on them so much. Trust me, some nobleman will soon come to our rescue. Stay here and wait all you want. I'm gonna go look for a garage. But I only managed a couple of steps before a fancy car pulled over, and an old man in a suit stepped out and offered to help. Turns out he's one of Mom's subscribers and even asked for a picture. Thank you so much for saving my chariot. You're the ginchiest. Gosh, here she goes again with her old-timey slangs. Eventually, we reached this Antsville, and as soon as we arrived, Mom immediately ran to her celeb friends and posed for photos, leaving me lost and confused. While I was trying to navigate through this madness, some whispering caught my attention. Isn't that Faye? She's so extra. I can't even get past the first 5 minutes of her videos. Oh yeah? And still, Mom thought the whole world was her fan. I don't get why she wanted to be here with these fake people that much. I was not having any of that stuffy place, so I went outside to get some air. As I wandered along the street, I spotted a group of teenagers dancing to old-school hip-hop. This is right up my alley. But wait. This stupid dress. My jam is coming on, though. So, letting my adrenaline take over, I joined the crowd. Everyone seemed impressed and even made room for me to shine. Then one of them joined me. I was really feeling it when a familiar screeching voice startled me. Elle, what on earth are you doing? Agitate the gravel, now! Then Mom dragged me to the car and drove me straight home. Gringles, do you understand that if anyone sees you like that, the perfect image I've built all these years will be in ruins? Pfft, then don't drag me into these things. Do it alone. Mind your manners. You should find something more practical rather than dancing like those good-for-nothing lazy bums. I'd had enough. Furious, I stormed into my room and stayed there all night. The next morning, I woke up to the rumbling sound of an empty stomach. When the coast was clear, I went downstairs to check the fridge for food. Ew, what's that rotten egg smell? Jesus, this fridge must be from Napoleon times! I reluctantly went for an instant soup, but the microwave wouldn't even heat it up. And guess what? My mom spent over $500 just for this thing's useless 50s look. Then I decided to put on a movie to blow off some steam. But the ancient TV wouldn't turn on either. Unbelievable! Is there anything in this rusty dollhouse that actually works? I need to get out of here before going insane. Oh, there's a new family moving in next door. Hang on, isn't that the guy I was dancing with last night? He smiled and waved at me, but I could only force a smile and nodded back. Hey, why the long face? If you're bored, come give me a hand. Then he dragged me over to his yard before I could reply. Once we're done, we rested on the front porch. Turns out his name was Royce. He'd just moved in with his dad and had enrolled at my school. I have to admit, he's quite the charmer, and within minutes, I felt comfortable enough to tell him about my unconventional life with Mom. My mom has way too much free time. I wish she'd find a man. Only then she might quit nagging me.
Meanwhile, my dad is always busy. If he had someone by his side, he'd want to spend more time with his family and be less of a workaholic.
Wait a minute.
So, how about we make them
A couple! Today is the day. Our parents have really tight schedules, so planning out this date took a lot of effort. But so far, so good. I told my mom to check out this vintage-themed restaurant in town while Royce told his dad that he wanted some father-son bonding time. Then, oops, we accidentally bump into each other and join tables. Look at my mom, gracefully fixing her hair and acting all charming. I winked at Royce and then we made an excuse to leave the table so the adults could have some private time. It's been a little while. Let's see how the two are doing. Goodness gracious, was Mr. Phillips slurping on the spaghetti? He's making a mess, and Mom seemed really embarrassed. We immediately rushed inside to save this date before it's too late. At the end of the evening, we thought the worst was behind us. Mr. Phillips walked out without holding the door open for Mom, making it swing back in her face. Gosh. Every beginning is difficult, I guess. Over the next few days, Royce and I beat our brains out to try and find a way to save their budding relationship. and came down to this. Mom, I twisted my ankle during practice. Can you please pick me up? Hey, Dad, I forgot my wallet at the practice room. Could you pick it up on the way home? Then we waited until our parents showed up and went inside to lock the door and even turn off the lights for dramatic effect. I immediately heard my mom's horrified scream. Then the room went quiet. I bet Mr. Phillips calmed her down. We waited a few minutes before calling the security guard to open the door, but contrary to our expectations, the one being hysterical was Mr. Phillips, who was now sobbing in my mother's arms. Wait, what? Turns out Royce forgot that his dad, who always sleeps with the light on, is in fact nyctophobic. There goes plan B. This was bad. Everything kept going south and the clock was ticking as Royce's dad had to leave for another business trip soon. We can't accept defeat like this. There must be something your dad's really good at, right? I don't know, he's good at fixing stuff. Ha! Then we know what to do next. While Mom was taking a shower, I waited for my plan to set in motion. 3, 2, 1. Ah! Elle! Help me! I ran over to her to see water shooting out from a broken faucet. After a couple of minutes of struggle, I called Royce's house for help, aka Mr. Phillips. As soon as he arrived, he went straight into the bathroom and helped Mom out of that pool. He looked way too cool, just like Superman. Now, time for his forte to speak up. As expected, he fixed it all in a blink, and Mom even invited the two of them to stay for dinner as a thank you. Great! During dinner, Mr. Phillips kept praising my mom's cooking. He admitted that this coziness reminded him of the good old days. Seeing things escalate between them, Royce and I finished quickly and excused ourselves to give them some time alone.
My dad's right. I can't remember the last time we sat together, as a family.
Then he told me that his parents divorced a few years back, and due to his dad's work, they were always moving from place to place, which really wore him out. Seeing his sad gaze made me feel so bad for him. I just wanted to give him a hug. Hold on, what nonsense was I thinking? I immediately brushed off that weird thought, and we chatted until late. The next day at school, I was talking to Royce as usual, when suddenly our conversation was interrupted. Oh my god, aren't you the new guy? How do you know him? Huh? Where did Daisy come from? And is befriending Royce something strange? Then she whispered to me that Royce's good looks hadn't gone unnoticed by other students. Wow, no wonder I kept feeling like we were being watched whenever we hung out at school. Daisy then proceeded to chime in between us and talk to Royce non-stop, even on our way home, when clearly her house was not in the same direction as ours. How annoying! But good news, back at home, Mom seemed to be floating on air. I caught her humming along to love songs, and she didn't nag me at all when I went to dance practice. Royce also said that his dad had been in a great mood too. Sparks were definitely flying between them. Our plan finally worked. Good job, sis. Huh? Was I really gonna be his stepsister? I should be happy with this outcome, right? But what was this uneasy feeling? One day at practice, I walked in on Daisy and Royce and immediately felt awkward, so I just rolled myself into a corner. Why did I react that way seeing them be so close? Is it possible that I've fallen for him? This can't be. We're gonna be family. There's no way this can happen. After that day, I tried to avoid Royce. Despite his new girl, he still bothered me, but I kept my distance. I was brooding all the way home, until I heard my mom talking on the phone as I entered the house. And I'll bake you some pecan pie, darling. Wait a minute, Royce and his dad were both allergic to pecan, so who's she being all lovey-dovey with? The next day, as usual, I told my mom I'd go to practice, but actually lingered outside the house to stalk on Mom. I saw her on the couch video calling some strange man. Oh gosh, did my mom really cheat on Royce's dad? How could she? Still in shock, I glumly lurked to Graffiti Alley and spotted Royce and Daisy there. They seemed to be talking about something really serious. So, you already knew? Yeah, ages ago, but it's clear that we can't just force love on someone. So you mean to just give up and happily watch them see other people? Oh no, so they knew Mom was unfaithful to Mr. Phillips already? How embarrassing. Right at that moment, Daisy spotted me, so I frantically ran away. After school the following day, Daisy wanted to talk with me in private. However, it was not about what happened yesterday. Do me a favor and stop hovering around Royce all the time, will you? But Royce is my friend. I can't just stop seeing him because you said so. If you like him, be my guest. Suddenly, Daisy fell to the ground. Ouch! Why did you push me? Huh? What is she doing? At that exact moment, Royce showed up and worriedly checked on her. Okay, now I know what's going on. Sorry about that. Let me give you a hand. When she was just about to stand up, I shoved her. Now you know what my real push feels like. I noticed Roy's stunned look, but just walked off. Now that I don't seem so great in his eyes anymore, he'll stop approaching me. Sweetie, what's wrong? What's wrong? This is all your fault. If you didn't cheat on Mr. Phillips, everything would be fine. What do you mean? Cheating on whom? Then my mom burst out laughing after I told her. Turns out they never dated. They both saw through our matchmaking plan early on, but decided to just be good friends. And the person I saw Mom video calling with was her boyfriend, but she hadn't introduced him yet because they'd only started dating. But why set us up in the first place? Finally, I had the chance to tell her how I truly felt about being forced into her vintage world and not being able to pursue my love for street dancing. Mom was quiet for a second and then said, Gee, how silly I've been. I've been inspiring strangers to go after their dreams, but I stopped my own daughter from pursuing hers. I felt so much better after pouring my heart out. I also mentioned Royce's situation with his dad, and she promised to talk to him about it. Hang on. This means... Mom, so you and Mr. Phillips are just friends, right? Immediately, I ran off to find Royce. As if on cue, the doorbell rang, and it was... Daisy! What game is she playing now? If she's here to mess around, come at me already. But surprisingly, Daisy apologized. I'm sorry, I was just blinded by jealousy. And there's nothing going on between me and Royce. He in fact already rejected me the day you saw us at the graffiti alley. Also, he asked me to give you this. I opened the box to see an adorable keychain with I love you on it. Oh my, is this a love confession? But there's also a note saying, I'm leaving for another city. Till we meet again. No! I sprinted to his house right away. Oh Lord, he's already packing. Without thinking, I hugged him and started sobbing. So, you read my message? Yeah. And what do you think? I feel the same, but you're leaving for real? Then, his smile turned playful, and he admitted he was just messing with me. Turns out he was going away, but only for a few days, for a dance competition. Really? That's awesome! But I can't forgive you for tricking me yet. So, yeah. Although we couldn't get our parents together, us two actually became a couple, so our matchmaking scheme isn't a total failure, right? We were even able to change a few things for the better. For instance, Mom spoke to Royce's dad, and he agreed not to move for the time being so his son could settle in. Mom also promised to check in on him when his dad's away on business. As for our family, my mom no longer tried so hard to act like she's not living in 2023. She now sometimes includes modern elements in her vlogs as well. And I even become a regular guest on her channel. Hey Beans, today my fiancé and I are baking this fab coconut cake, along with my daughter and our boyfriend. They are hip-hop dancers. Check out their channel if that's something you fancy. They're really the cat's pajamas.
It's not here. Not there either. Where can it be? It's not just any shirt. It's my most prized possession. It has Kendall Jenner, my idol's autograph on it. Franny, your t-shirt was dirty, so I cleaned it for you. Come have a look. Oh, snap. I rushed over to see my precious shirt neatly piled on top of the fresh laundry. No. The autograph's completely gone. Grandma! That's right. The person responsible for this unwanted blank shirt is my grandma, who just moved in with us after Granddad passed away. At first, it seemed exciting because my memories about Grandma were all from my happy childhood with her. But now I'm taking it back. She's a literal disaster. You know what? She is getting on in years, but still wants to learn to use social media. My mom even bought her a brand new iPhone 14. Meanwhile, her dear daughter was stuck with this lame iPhone 8. Honestly, all she needed was just one of those brick phones that can only take calls. With her forgetfulness, she'll forget all her passwords. So it's best to just log in with my iCloud. After all, this phone will become mine anyway. Oh, that's quite a handsome young man. You think so too? Indeed, Josh's attractiveness is second to none. He's every girl's dream man. And yours as well, right? As if I stood a chance. He's notoriously cold, and none of the girls from school seem to interest him. Well, that probably was the only time we shared the same thought. Otherwise, we're always arguing about all kinds of things, especially the way I dress. She didn't even bother asking me before sewing up all my favorite ripped jeans and then left a dress that she'd made on my bed with a note. This adorable dress will suit you much better. I used to love her handmade dresses when I was 5, but who even wears anything like this these days? That's not all. She nagged me all the time for straightening my hair instead of keeping it naturally frizzy, since it's supposedly cuter. And guess what? It's actually her who I'd inherited my natural hair from. Bet she didn't know it was the reason I had to grow up with my classmates saying stuff like, "You're actually quite pretty, but it's a shame about the hair." And, "How come you don't have straight hair like your parents? Are you adopted?" Those hurtful words made me hate my hair with a passion and wish for beautiful, smooth, straight hair, like Kendall Jenner's. So of course, I'll keep straightening it every day, no matter what Grandma says. Thankfully, those complaints will finally come to an end tomorrow as I'm going back to school after summer break. Yay! Huh? What's everyone buzzing about? At that moment, the teacher walked in and announced that our class will have a very special new student. And then a very familiar figure entered my class. It was my grandma? What on earth? Did she get lost on her way to bingo or what? How humiliating. Maybe if I stayed deadly still, she wouldn't spot me, and no one would know it was my granny. Oh, my sweetie pie, you forgot your orange juice. All eyes were on me. Good grief. Someone help me disappear from this planet, please. After class, I had to sneak out as fast as I could to avoid having lunch with my grandma. But my best friend Lloyd wouldn't quit teasing me. Suddenly, I heard someone laughing loudly across the room. Grandma? But who was she sitting with? Wow, Jose has quite a peculiar taste in women. He ignores every single girl in this school, but is now completely smitten over your granny. Jeez, why is she bothering him? Jose must have felt uncomfortable. I quickly went over there, apologized, and pulled my grandma away. On the way home from school, my grandma recounted her day just like a little kid would. Do you know that they have vending machines in the hallway with all kinds of snacks? That's genius! And oh my, the campus is big. I almost wet myself while searching for the restroom. Tell me which part of this is funny again? It only proves that someone her age belongs in a nursing home, not a high school. I needed to talk to Mom, so when she was finally alone in the kitchen, I immediately asked her, how exactly did Grandma end up in my class? It turned out that when my parents invited Grandma to live with us, she told them she would, but only if she could go to school. I think it's a lovely idea. It means she won't be lonely at home all day, as you'll keep her company. Besides, she spent her whole life taking care of our family, so it's our turn to look after her, right? Yeah, I suppose Mom raised some valid points, but who knew that Grandma could turn my school life upside down like this? She clung to me all day, ate whatever I ate, listened to the music I listened to, and even hung out with my friends. Worse still, she told them all embarrassing childhood stories about me. How I used to eat toothpaste because the ad said it was edible, and how I incubated eggs myself to see if I could hatch a chick. But that's not the worst part. She broke my hair straightener, so now I'm stuck wearing this stupid hat. How annoying. Hey, breaking news! What is it this time? Jose has found the girl of his dreams, and she's here at our school. No way! No girls have caught his eye before. Why now? Franny, what on earth? I looked down and, oops, I just accidentally turned him into Sully from Monsters, Inc. Sorry, my bad. Okay, let me see. As Lloyd told me, this was the girl Jose got to know through Tinder before she mysteriously vanished. Moore, 17 years old, goes to my school and... Wait, she only has this picture? All I could see was her frizzy brown hair. Out of nowhere, someone snatched my hat. That must be Lloyd trying to get back at me for the paint job earlier. I tried to grumble at him, but only saw Grandma with my hat in her hand. Franny, your hair is so beautiful. Why cover it up? And also, these clothes. The dress I made for you goes far better with your hair. Enough. There's no way I'd let anyone see me with this hideous hair and granny outfit. Please, Grandma, leave me alone and don't cause me any more trouble. This is my school, and having you around is embarrassing. She looked shocked and was about to say something, but just left without another word. So, it's been a week since we last talked. It seemed that I was no longer her concern as she made new friends. So it's good for both of us, right? Suddenly, I heard a deep voice behind me. Hi, Franny. Can I talk to you about something? Wait, this voice? I immediately turned around to see Joe standing there, smiling at me. Oh my, this is the first time Joe's ever asked to speak to a girl. All the envious eyes are on me. I'm the luckiest girl here. Has he finally seen my unique charm? The thing is, I happened to see your curly hair the other day, and you look quite like the girl in the picture. I wonder if you are... Oh, he didn't come here because of me. Sorry, but I'm not Moore. I could see the disappointment on his face. He apologized for getting the wrong person, but before leaving, he smiled and told me, "By the way, you're pretty with that curly hair." Really? That frizzy hair that I've gone out of my way to hide? Can't believe someone out there, besides Granny, actually likes it. A few days later, I arrived at school to a frightening scene. Jose was hand in hand with Amy. Turns out she had come forwards as the mysterious girl. Let's see, 17? Check. Curly brown hair? Check. And her last name is Moore. There's no mistaking it. But I kept wondering, what does Jose like about this notorious wild girl? Her clique, which now included my dear Granny, are always playing dumb tricks for attention. Look, she's no different from a traffic light now that she's friends with them. Once, their group even turned the library into a runway. Obviously, this quickly reached the supervisor, but, well, only my grandma was slow enough to get caught. Thanks to that, she received a ticket to the principal's office and they called in my mom. Don't you find it ridiculous that a person this age is still getting scolded by the principal? School is not the place for grandma at all. Performing art requires a bold personality, girl. I might be old, but my spirit remains youthful. You know what? I'm going to participate in the Rise to Fame contest as well. I think I may just win. I turned to my mother with begging eyes, but only received a forced smile and a just let her do what she wants. You'll lose anyway. Why bother? How about you sign up too, and we'll see who wins? Ha! Fine. Challenge accepted. I'll defeat you easily, Granny. Just wait and see. Finally, Rise to Fame, my school's annual competition, arrived. Each team of 3 will participate in different rounds, with the 2 best teams going to the final. First round, handball, was a piece of cake for us. Having 2 sporty types on the team helped with that. As for Granny's team, which consisted of herself, Jose, and Dolly Amy, they were eliminated almost immediately. After sports was a Sudoku round. Each team will compete against one another. Whoever solves the puzzle first wins, which should be a breeze because I used to spend rain-filled afternoons playing this game with Granny as a kid. On the other hand, Amy was complaining to the organizing committee that this round was a joke, since Sudoku was so outdated. The more she talked, the more it showed that she's terrible at math and numbers. So it'll be like taking candy from a baby, right? But I forgot Granny was on their team, and unexpectedly, Jose was also very quick-witted. It didn't take them long to solve such a difficult puzzle. Seeing them hugging and celebrating pissed me off. Losing to them by a mere second was the real stinger. Focus, Franny. We had to beat them in the countries and histories round to win. Just a few more minutes till the final round. I was about to leave the waiting room when suddenly I heard a ding coming from this phone left on the chair. It's Grandma's phone. But wait, she knows how to use Tinder? Curious, I opened it and on the screen were all the messages from Jose and the mysterious Moore. Why does Grandma have this account? And why is Jose convinced Amy isn't who he's looking for? I immediately went to look for my grandma and found her in the corner of the stage wing. But as I approached her, she pulled my hand in and signaled for me to keep silent. I thought you let that annoying old hag join the team as a joke. Who knew she'd be so helpful? You'll win easily. Yeah, right? I even heard that history is her strength. I just need her to finish this last round, then I'll kick her out in a heartbeat. The whole group burst out laughing. I nervously turned to look at Granny, but she didn't show any sign of anger. So what will my grandma do next, you ask? As soon as the final round began, she stood up, took the mic, and announced, I want to withdraw from the competition because I will never let two-faced people get the better of me. After that, she left, and the whole audience started to make a fuss, while Amy's face turned pale. However, the real shocker was when Jose also came on stage. Me too. I don't want to be in a team with a liar. Then he walked away as Amy chased after him. The audience buzzed, and the organizers announced that this meant our team had automatically won the competition. I rushed home right after the awards ceremony to find Grandma ruminating in the garden. I quietly sat down next to her and put my hand on her shoulder to console her. She looked at me, gently smiled, and started telling me stories I'd never heard before. I discovered that she fell pregnant at 16 and dropped out of school. Her friends weren't very nice to her, so she'd never resumed her education. So now she had time, she decided to go back to school to experience her lost youth. That's why, Franny, you should never let others' mean words get to you. Cherish what you have, because there are still people who love that side of you. What she said was really touching, and it reminded me of Jose's compliments on my hair. Granny, so what about the Tinder account? Oh, I know you really like Jose, so I created an account to learn more about him so I could help you. Turns out, that profile picture was Grandma when she was younger, hence the similarity to me, and Moore actually was her maiden name. I hugged her and profusely apologized for my poor behavior. She gently patted my head, smiled, and said she'd take me to a secret spot. The next day, I returned to my naturally frizzy hair and put on the dress Granny gave me. It wasn't trendy, but it fit me perfectly, and weirdly, I felt kinda confident wearing it. My grandma and I happily walked into a book cafe when I spotted Jose. I've brought the person you're looking for here. We both looked at her with questioning eyes. You mean, turned out there was still one thing she hadn't told me, that the alias Moore she put up on Tinder was all based on my preferences, my hobbies, my habits, my taste in music, etc. She'd been collecting everything about me to text Jose. I had to let him know there's an interesting girl like our Franny out there, right? That was why Jose didn't feel as compatible with Amy. Then the intelligence round confirmed it, as he and the mysterious girl both had one thing in common, a passion for Sudoku. In the end, everything was cleared up. Grandma is still attending my school, and I actually don't mind it anymore. She brings in homemade cakes for me and my friends, tells us interesting stories about the old days, and gives out the best advice. Most importantly, she made me realize that being me isn't so bad, frizzy hair and all. Almost forgot. You're also wondering what happened between me and Jose, huh? Well, I think you should see for yourself.